we did our presentation on the underrepresentation of women in STEM. I'll first start off by explaining what STEM is. It stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And rather than teaching these 4 subjects separately, STEM integrates them together. The skills are taught the way they'll be used in the workforce and real world. And these are just some examples of what will be in each subject of STEM. And this is just an introductory video.
So we're going to have a quiz in the beginning as an interactive activity, but because of the snow day, we couldn't do that. So we're gonna have like a little mock quiz now. So I'll pause and you can answer, and then I'll just tell you the answer. So for the first question, what percentage of women switch out of a STEM degree majors in US colleges? So 2%, 12%, 22%, or 32%? And the answer is D, 32%. The second one is blank percent of girls say their parents encourage them to become an actress, while blank percent of girls say their parents have encouraged them to think about an engineering career. So the choices are 17% and 6%, 21% and 10%, 28% and 17%, or 31% and 20%. And the answer is B, 21% and 10%. The third question is what percentage of freshmen in the US intend to major in engineering, math, statistics, or computer science? And the choices are A, about 10%, B, about 20%, C, about 30%, or D, about 40%. And the answer is A, about 10%. And then the fourth question is what percentage of women with STEM degrees work in STEM jobs? So the choices are A, 13%, B, 26%, C, 39%, or D, 52%. And the answer is B, 26%.
So these are just some facts about women in STEM. Only 24% of the nation's STEM jobs are held by women. 1 in 7 engineers are women. And as you can see from these charts, minority women are very underrepresented in STEM. And there is also a wage gap in STEM between men and women.
Okay, so to talk about some research that we read while designing this study, we read an article by, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Astorn and Bigari and Spear from 2019. And so basically in this article, it talks about how women are much more likely to switch out of a STEM major than men, and they give 3 reasons why. So the first reason was that women shy away from competition when men seem to embrace it. The second one could be the gender of the professors. So if they identify with the gender of their professor, that could have an effect. Or the third reason, which we chose to study in ours, was the composition of first-year classes, and that impacts their choice in major. So since we can't change what the women here at TCNJ have already taken in their first year, we can help women become more interested in STEM in the future, and that's what we wanted to look at when we were doing this project. The second article that we did was by Shapiro and Williams, and that was in 2012. And so this article discusses the impact that parents and teachers have on the interest in STEM fields, and this could start as early as preschool or elementary school, which is pretty crazy. If they start spreading negative stereotypes, especially towards like math, in children, that could definitely have a huge effect on their interest in the future and on what career path they choose. So we can see whether students who are interested in STEM were exposed to STEM subjects as children, and how that has an effect. And then the third article was actually an interview, and it was by Prives in 2013. And so basically in this article, they interviewed Dr. Spana Sharon, and she's a professor who does research about why women do not pursue STEM related fields. And she talks about the stereotypes that actually help women realize that these are untrue and that they can pursue STEM related fields. And so in our study, we aim to talk about stereotypes of women in STEM and present statistics to them, showing them the underrepresentation, and then hopefully that can help spark interest in the women here.
So this is some data from TCNJ, and it shows how women are very underrepresented in the STEM field. So women only represent 24.9% of the population in the School of Engineering. For the School of Science, they represent 51.6%, and it's primarily biology majors. And lastly, within the School of Business, women only represent 39.6% of the population. And this shows specifically for the School of Engineering how there are much less female engineer majors than male engineer majors from 2014 to 2018. It's been the same every year. Like, there's been a lot more male engineering majors than female.
So why is this important? Why should we study women in STEM? Well, a lot of the women are underrepresented, and a lot of the women and minorities are overlooked in the medical field and in the scientific field. And because women are not contributing as much to science and math and engineering and technology, they're not able to show that perspective and get that alternative outlook on what science can look like.
So our goals were to raise awareness about the underrepresentation of women in STEM both on and off campus. We also wanted to inspire women and minority students to consider a STEM major or minor, and we wanted to discover and share the stories of women currently in the relevant major at TCNJ, including how their experiences differ from their male counterparts. So for our advocacy effort, Kelly conducted interviews with 2 female STEM students to learn more about their personal experiences within their majors. Then we created a trifold poster board and three flyers to inform students about the statistics of the gender gap in STEM fields, testimonials, inspirational women and minorities in STEM, and reasons to consider a STEM minor or major at TCNJ. Then we included a barcode on the flyers for inquiring students to take, which concerns their previous experiences with women in STEM and how the information given has impacted their impression of STEM.
So I conducted two interviews with females at TCNJ. One was a biology major and one was a math major with a statistics specialization. And so basically I asked each of them 3 questions. The first one was, what have you noticed about the representation of women in your STEM major at TCNJ? The second one was, what have your experiences been like as a STEM major at TCNJ? And why do you think there's a gender gap in your STEM major at TCNJ? And so to start with the biology major, when asked about the representation of women in biology at TCNJ, she said that there seems to be a pretty even split of women, which we also found when we looked at the statistics of percentage of women to men in the biology major. And then when we asked about her experiences in a STEM major at TCNJ, she had mostly positive experiences, except with male lab partners. So she said that in lab settings, when she had a male lab partner, they would want to do more of the hands-on work, whereas they thought she should take a back seat and take lab notes, do observations, where they should be doing hands-on work. And she said that that was really upsetting, that they thought that she couldn't do the hands-on work as well. And then we asked, why do you think there is a gender gap in the STEM major? And she said that almost all the science classes involve this hands-on work and like labs. So because the males have that perception, it could steer women away from becoming biology majors. And then when talking to the math major with the statistics specialization, she said that math at TCNJ is definitely a male-dominated major, and because there's such an underrepresentation of women in math, it steers women away from pursuing STEM fields. So she also talked about a stereotype within the math field. A lot of the women who are math majors are also double majoring in education, and that creates a stereotype. So it separates them from the men that are math majors. And then when asked about her experiences as a STEM major at TCNJ, she said that most of her professors and other students are very collaborative here, and so she doesn't notice the underrepresentation much, and she's had pretty positive experiences. However, again, when she was working in group work, the male students would take other male students' ideas before her own, and hers would be kind of like an afterthought. They would want to try their processes first and then try hers, which was very frustrating for her. And then I asked, why do you think there's a gender gap in the STEM field? And she said that most famous mathematicians that they learn about who win awards, who've come up with all these theories, are men. So it puts an idea out that men are the ones doing math, and she said that that was really frustrating, and unfortunately it steers a lot of women away from the math major.
So in order to collect our data collection, Kelly, Courtney, and myself tabled in the Education Cafe, sharing information about women in STEM in the United States, and specifically at TCNJ. We answered all the questions that the students asked, and the students were then asked to take a quiz about their experience and what they had learned. So this is the trifold poster that we made for the tabling. On the far left, we had the statistics. In the middle, we had reasons to join STEM and testimonials. And on the far right, we had inspirational minority women in STEM careers.
So here were some tabling materials. We had 3 different brochures. We had one brochure that had mainly statistics, another brochure that had statistics about women in the US and women at TCNJ. We had a poster about women in education, and we displayed all of them in our tabling. This was a survey that we were given to the participants, and they were talking about their knowledge of the STEM field before and after the presentation of our poster, and they participated by doing this and also looking at the poster and brochures that we laid out.
So based on the data that we were able to collect based on TCNJ's admissions data, we found that 58% of students at TCNJ reported that there was not a good representation of STEM majors at TCNJ. So when asked in our survey how much do people know about STEM, or about women in STEM, this was part of our pre-survey, it was found that 41.7% knew just a little about it, and 18.8% knew little to none. And after viewing the poster, when we asked the same question, that number jumped to, the number that people that were very familiar with the topic went from 8.3% to 25%, and the familiarity from being moderately knowing the subject went from 31.3% to 62.5%. After I analyzed the results using SPSS, the results indicated that that 47.9% of participants were slightly interested in the STEM major, with 27.1% strongly considering the STEM major, as compared to the pre-test. To test our effectiveness in delivering the material, we also asked how people viewed our poster, and it was found that people saw it as informative and effective, with 62.5% giving it a 5 being the best, 1 being the worst, 22.2% rating it as a 4, 12.5% rating as a 3, 2.1% rating as a 2, and nobody gave us a 1. So there were no correlations between exposure to STEM during youth and the number of women in STEM majors today. The p-value that I found in SPSS was a 0.4 or greater than 0.4, which is not significant. And there was no correlation between the TCNJ enrollment data and our sample major enrollment, which was greater than 0.5. So based on the based on our post-presentation survey, 41.7% indicated they knew just a little beforehand, and that number went down to 10.4% afterwards. And 31.8% stated that they knew little to nothing, and that number jumped down to 2.1%, which is statistically significant. So despite our best efforts, there were a few limitations of our study, as there would be for any self-report studies. And so we had the social desirability bias, which may have accounted for such a large decrease after viewing the presentation. Experimenter error in the form of confirmation bias that we had, as we were expecting our participants to have greater knowledge about the subject matter afterwards. And a non-randomized sample from the education building, giving this a non-experimental design, obviously. Therefore, that obviously was not representative of TCNJ majors, and is probably why we had insignificant results related to the TCNJ major population and our direct samples major. We only had 41 participants, and the limited timescale of the project prevented us from really looking at how this would have impacted admissions data over a course of a few years, such as that has been collected by the admissions committee at TCNJ.
Our project was relatively successful, but there are some future directions for research that we would like to consider if we have the opportunity. So we were thinking that we could inform women in high school. In this case, we were informing women in college, and that might have been too late, so women in high school could be a better crowd. And we thought that we could have admissions drives, as well as monitoring admissions data over the course of a few years to understand how effective our STEM efforts are to the effort.
So to conclude, we know that the stereotype threat is an important explanation for the lack of women in STEM fields. So we can increase representation and decrease negative stereotypes by encouraging young girls to identify with role models that have STEM careers. So we can also confront and counteract our own implicit biases and take the steps needed to improve them. We can implement these standards against gender discrimination in our own workplace and classrooms. Lastly, we can also mentor, so we can listen to the challenges and share the experiences of women in our lives that have STEM careers or in STEM majors, by boosting their confidence and reminding them of their accomplishments despite society's minimization of women in these fields. So it's just a brief video about how we can engage more girls and women to join STEM.
And so again, we were going to have another interactive activity. We were going to have another quiz, but again, because of the snow day, we couldn't do that. So I'm just going to ask the questions. I'll give you the answers, and then, yeah. So the first question is, what does STEM stand for? And so it stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The second question is, what is one reason women are more likely to switch out of a STEM field? And so there's 3 reasons that they would do this. One is women shy away from competition. The second reason is that the gender of their professors might affect this, and the third reason is the composition of their first-year classes. And then for the third question, it's how can we increase representation and decrease negative stereotypes of women in STEM? The answer to that one is by encouraging young women to identify with role models that have STEM careers. And then I can't give you an answer for the last one, but we just wanted you to think about what was one new piece of information that you learned from our project. So thank you, that's the end of our project. If you have any questions, we're not in class obviously, but feel free to email any one of us and we would be happy to answer. Thank you.